Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Good Monday, everyone. Hope you're well. Thanks for tuning to the program. I'm Jeff, that's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you go to listen live via the streaming free, always. Appreciate you if you're streaming. Appreciate you if you're listening on the good old-fashioned radio. I wonder how many people are listening to the program in their garage right now. Never really think about those of you listening in your garage.
I think fewer than will be in the next couple of weeks, and it has nothing to do with the results on Saturday. The weather's about to turn.
Yeah. About to get nice.
So that garage listening's going to go up.
Good old garage listening, buddy. I loved it as a kid. I had a boombox. I'd listen to stuff out in the garage. Loved it.
There's something about the acoustics of the garage. Mm-hmm. It's like listening to the radio on the beach. The heavy treble, you don't hear much bass.
That's right.
But the wind and the garage listening is a good sound.
It is a good sound. I used to do that while I shot hoops. Sometimes would sit and then me and my brother Aaron, we would play a lot of games out in the garage. We had these like makeshift, because there was one part of the garage that kind of like had this carpet area because my stepdad's tool shed was out there and he had stuff there. And we'd set up a goal where you could dive around, make plays, and we had the music cranking there. Good times.
The finish on the garage floor for hockey is perfect.
Perfect.
What a surface.
Yeah, that's true. You can email the show. Many of you have. Some of you said some really nice things. I appreciate that. It's not Flag Day anytime soon. I have to get back to these people at some point. JCS at 979 ESPNradio.com. On Twitter, it's at JCameronShow. Hello, YouTubers. How the heck are you? Hope you're well. So Florida State went to Louisville with what we thought was a little bit of, whatever you want to call it, positive feelings, momentum, belief. They had that beaten out of them real quick. That turned into an ass-kicking in a hurry. And it is a stunning result to lose 48-16. I don't want to, I'm not trying to jump off a cliff and talk about this as I would in a normal year, because this is anything but a normal year. It's a really weird set of circumstances. We've seen strange results both here but around the country, and I think we're going to continue to see that in some cases. But I do want to say that while expectations have to be shifted when you don't have a spring and you've got a new coaching staff and you're going through another coaching change and you're installing with the new staff a new offense, a new defense, and you are, transitioning from one quarterback to another quarterback. Lots of things are at play here that mean you have to change sort of your expectations of what is success. But I don't think you can go week to week with zero expectations. I mean, I think it's fair to expect improvement in certain areas. Maybe not great play, maybe not dominant play, maybe not wildly consistent play. But I think you should begin to see some signs of growth, and we're just not seeing that on the defensive side of the ball. We have seen it on the offensive side of the ball. This wasn't a great outing for the offense by any means, but we've seen an identity developed. We've seen them call plays based on a skill set that the quarterback has, and you can kind of put the pieces together there. You've seen the offensive line improve a lot, and you've found a couple of guys here and there. LaDamian Webb, for example, is a good example. And I think that most fans would look at that and say, well, all right, okay, I can see some semblance of success and progress and something that we can build upon, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Defensively, you just can't say it. And if anything, this might have been the most disappointing effort we've seen yet on defense. And that's saying something, because they've been pretty much trash the whole year as far as the level of play, not the people. And so the level of play has been pathetic. Now, I have figured over time that it would get better, and I figured that, okay, there's some people you just got to weed out of the program, you got to move on from. In some cases, you're just not good enough. Like I'd say, I could argue that they're just not good enough at linebacker. They're not good enough at defensive end. They don't really have anybody that can play a traditional defensive end and make plays. Certainly nobody who's twitchy enough to get to the quarterback and beat tackles. They don't have a guy on their roster currently that can do that. And that really limits what your expectation can be for a defense, right? If you're not good on the edges, if you're not good at linebacker, if you're below average in the secondary, you're going to be a bad defense. But that doesn't excuse seeing guys run wide open, nobody on your screen. It doesn't excuse having the wrong personnel on the field for certain critical situations down and distance. You know, this is where I think the fans are growing increasingly frustrated with Adam Fuller. Not that they think that Adam Fuller should be producing a dominant defense with what he has, but not one that is an absolute unmitigated disaster every single week. You know, I think that's a fair expectation to say you've got to get better. You've got to show me something that there's a sign pointing in the right direction. And you're not seeing that. And I think that's why Mike Norvell slipped up in the postgame and kind of questioned some of what they were doing scheme-wise in certain situations, which means he kind of called out his defense coordinator. Now, he's unhappy with the level of play, and a lot of these kids a lot of times look like they're jogging in place. I'm not so sure they're always showing the maximum amount of effort on defense that they could give. I'm not as quick to jump on the effort thing as many fans are. I don't think it's always a matter of quitting. I think there's some confusion there. I think they're broken. I think there's some poor personnel. But this game, Tom, I did think there was some loafing. This game, I did see guys really not maximizing effort. Let's just put it that way. There were guys kind of going through the motions.
Yeah.
I said it a lot on Saturday to my family, and I'll say it here again a couple times today. A lot of guys just look like they're occupying space. Yeah, guys just kind of occupying space, not attacking, not really playing football. Just kind of occupying space in the general area they think they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think linebacker is the first place you look at there with the outside zone runs or stretch runs that Louisville was putting out there. It's not illegal. It's not illegal to shed a block. It's not illegal to fight through a block.
You can get off blocks. Yeah.
This is one thing we talked about on the pregame show on Saturday, which was what jumped out from Louisville's defense against Notre Dame. Why did they magically do this thing that they hadn't shown that they were capable of doing against Miami and Georgia Tech and others? They did a really good job of beating a zone scheme to the spot. They did a really good job of getting there first and pursuing the play and shedding blocks if they needed to help and support. We didn't do that at all ourselves.
Well, we never get to a spot, Tom. That's a good point you bring up. A lot of times when you talk about a race to a spot or beating your man to a spot and helping break up plays that way or disrupt timing of plays, those kinds of things, you just don't see that from this group. And that's where I would say they're not athletic enough. You know, they've got a bunch of Jags out there, just another guy. They don't have a lot of elite players out there. I don't care what the rankings say. Watch them play. Watch them play. They don't have a lot of playmakers on this team. And some that maybe will emerge as such in time, like Travis J. might. You know, I think he's got potential to do that. And there may be a couple guys, but for the most part, you don't see it. Ira Schoffel is going to join us next hour. And, of course, all guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway and 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. You know, I mean, it's hard because I want to be level-headed while I watch a train wreck. And we're all emotionally invested, so it's hard to do. But at the same time, you can absolutely be critical of some of what you're seeing here from the defense, and it's heartbreaking.
Well, I think the unemotional thing to do would be, first of all, to concede that when you have a roster that's devoid of talent and depth and they've got a culture issue, you've got to concede that if you're going to improve, there are going to be some downs along the way. Like when we're down with this group of talent on the two deep on offense and defense, it's going to look really bad. And on the way towards repairing things, think about Jimbo's repair of the program. 2010 was a step forward, but there were still games where we were, not good. 2011 was worse than 2010. And we're saying, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, we took a minor step back, right?
We did. That was the Virginia game on homecoming.
Well, in reality, Tom, if we're talking about that growth, in 2012, everybody thought they were primed to win a national championship and take a huge step forward, and then it ended up being a disappointment, and we turned around and win it in 2013.
Agreed. Yeah. Yes, this was the wake off a bye in 2011. Like, what the hell is that performance?
Well, and that was poor, yeah.
However, that being said, you can expect more than we saw on Saturday. That's not the usual different, little blip on the radar where you have peaks and valleys, strikes and gutters. That was not a gutter. That's 3 lanes over, that bowling ball.
Well, and again, I suspect that there are going to be, so we talk about peaks and valleys and strikes and gutters. In a year in which you didn't have a spring and you have a new coaching staff and you've not been able to assess your roster until late in the game, and then you had a disrupted fall, all that stuff. Guys couldn't be on campus to work out and eat properly and all that. You're going to forgive some of those really wayward throws, to use your analogy with the bowling ball. You're gonna forgive a couple of those moments where you're like, well, that looks like something that would happen in the year of COVID.
Right.
But
no, that bowling ball was in the snack counter and hit the girl in the face, broke her nose.
I feel like there's something we don't know. And, I'll speculate on this later. I want to talk to you about it, some thoughts I have on this. It just felt like something was off.
But, you could hear it in Norvell. You could hear it in the post game, and then even when he talks about Fuller, it's like, all right, fine, I'll concede. And
we're going to play that audio here in a second, but it's strange. This is where not being out at practice, this is where not being able to see what's going on is really tough for those of us reporting on the team and talking about the team and analyzing the team, because you don't get that insight. Given what the policy was and what we figured it to be, if this team had a major shakeup or a fight at practice and somebody got in trouble or a coach was, sent off the field by Norvell or something weird happened, we would have kind of had a sense of, oh, man, this hasn't been a good week. This hasn't been a good week. I wonder how they're going to come out and play. But we had no idea. Because the last time we saw this team, they were celebrating a victory over the number 5 team in the country, and Norvell was in the locker room smashing the rock, and they were celebrating together and singing Kumbaya. So that's the last image you had in your mind of where they were. And then they take the field, and they go down and score. And I tweeted out at that point, 16 of the last 32 drives since Jordan Travis became the starting quarterback, Florida State has scored. Everything looked just fine. Quickly, we found out it wouldn't be, because you get the big scoring play from Louisville, and it's just really undisciplined football on defense. Okay, 7-7. Let's see what happens. Well, what happens is basically a summarily disappointing and brutalizing set of circumstances that lead to a lopsided beatdown.
Yeah, towards the end of the first quarter, I was thinking, okay, he's going to have to gather the guys on the sideline, be at the defense when the offense is there.
Wake some folks up.
He's going to walk over to the benches and have everybody, eyes on me, around me kind of a thing. But I was thinking, all right, so what button do you push here if you're Norvell? Is it the arm around the shoulder one more time? Guys, settle down. Don't overdo anything. Just do what you're supposed to do. Or is it going to be the tirade? Is it I'm going to lash into you? He didn't really do either. And I'm not blaming him, because I don't know the dynamics of what you're talking about precisely. I don't know what practice looked like. I don't know what the flight was like. I don't know what the pregame warm-up was like. But he looked like somebody who absorbed that loss like we all did. Somebody who was going through the slow torture of watching that performance behind his plastic mask. He's going, just wincing the whole game.
He's livid. I have a theory on why he didn't, do the thing you're describing, which is to gather the team and flip out on them or whatever, or do something, right? You can't do that every week. It loses its effect. You can't do it every single week. At some point, they got to take ownership. I think his disappointment has less to do with the severity of the beatdown, and that certainly is disappointing, and more to do with the fact that he's watching this play out, and he realizes not even the win last week can bring us together to where we need to go. Not even the surprise upset on national television, the thrill, the joy they expressed for that. Not even that is enough for these guys to take the next step and take ownership of their team. And he's thinking, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to get them to do this? And the look on his face also seemed to suggest maybe it's not in the cards.
Like maybe practice wasn't good.
Practice wasn't good.
That was the challenge that we talked about is, all right, so that you've now fed them some positive reinforcement, even though they didn't score a point in the second half against North Carolina, and they still won.
Well, one thing I'll say about that, and people have brought that up all week, they didn't score in the second half. Yeah, that's true.
But that's what you latch on.
They didn't score an offense in this game either in the second
half.
Yeah, but
true.
Of course, that's easily remedied if a kid can make a field goal once in a blue moon. So they've missed field goals. They also got down to the 2-yard line in the game against North Carolina on the opening drive to put that game away, and then you get a dumbass personal foul.
They get down goal to goal here as well.
Yeah, well, and then you have all the drops. You have a touchdown pass thrown by Chubba Purdy to Keyshawn Helton right in his hands. He drops how many balls did Keyshawn Helton drop this Saturday? 7? I mean, it was unreal. He had just an egregious drop multiple times.
Well, one was the seam throw. The seam throw after the Daniel blindside block call. That was one hell of a sequence because it looked like we were just going to be playing a Big 12 football game at that point.
Yeah, somebody was going to win 50-48.
Right,
yeah, I thought the same thing. The receivers were awful. We could do this all day.
It's not necessarily about that we, it's funny math to say that we didn't score in the second half because we moved the ball. I'm saying that's what you can latch on to and say, look how many things went wrong and how we could have lost this game. We needed 2 drops and a non-call to get over on North Carolina and not lose this game 35-31. So, with that in mind,
let's go to work.
Let's take the win and let's go to work.
Yeah. I think he was disappointed in practice this past week. I'm putting words in his mouth. He didn't tell me that. I didn't hear that. Nobody that covers this team was at practice last week, so none of us know for certain what kind of practice they had, but it couldn't have been good.
He didn't look stunned.
No, he did not look stunned. You're right. He looked disappointed, as he should be. He looked frustrated. He looked flummoxed a little bit, but he didn't look
like the kid or the dad who told his kid to do something because you're going to get hurt, and then he's watching his kid get hurt.
Yeah.
Because he didn't listen to him the next time, and he's seeing it happen right before his eyes.
I think an analogy I would use, because, when you coach or when you play or when you're involved in any group organization and you're all interdependent on one another, there's a leader, a manager, somebody there, a boss, in this case a coach, where you've had individual discussions, you've had group discussions about what expectations are and how it is that we all have to arrive at this place.
We've had meetings upon meetings upon meetings.
Yes, yeah. We had meetings to discuss the meetings. But we've done these things, and I've made it expressly clear that you are to do this and you are to do that, and you have to follow this protocol, and if we all do these things, then we can be successful. And they looked at me and they nodded their heads, and I asked them both in person and via email, does everybody understand what we have to do this week to succeed at our job? And they all said yes, and look at these dumbasses now. Nobody's doing a thing that we talked about. Is this really where we're at? I got to have more effing meeting with you guys next week? Because none of us are going to do what we're told to do. None of you are going to take responsibility for what I'm asking you to do for the guy next to you. That's what he looked like to me. It's like, you tell your kids, don't ever lie to me. A lot of things you can do, and we'll work around it, whatever it might be. You're going to make mistakes. We all have. I get it. It's my job to discipline you. It's your job to be curious and push the boundaries. Got it. But if you lie to me, I can't help you, and there will be hell to pay. At least that's the discussion I've had with my kids. So when they lie to you, you almost have no ability to yell at them in the moment. You're so profoundly disappointed because that's the one thing you told them they can't do. So you don't even react with rage. You just look at them. Tell them to go to their room. We'll talk later. I don't want to see you. That's what he looked like to me. A guy who was looking out there going, I'm not even mad. I just can't believe this is where we're at. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Short segment here. Let's hear from Mike Norvell. We have post-game audio from him.
It's a short, his answer about the defense, what gives kind of a thing. Where
it's real brief.
He's willing to.
Yeah. Let's hear it, and we'll comment on it in just a moment.
There were a handful of times that, as you prepare and you work through the week of what you expect and what you see. I mean, there's times that we were, had pretty good calls into some of these plays, and there was times that we probably could get better situations.
Well, yeah, he's saying, look, there are calls that were right, that were made where guys are in positions to make plays and they don't make plays. That happens every week, especially with this defense. And then, obviously, we could have been in a better call in certain other situations. Could have been in a different and better defensive alignment, scheme, concept, whatever it might be, than we were in for some of these plays. And that's obviously a direct shot at his defense coordinator.
There was one moment where Mike looked like he came unhinged a little bit, and it was kind of awkward. I believe we were on offense, and he's walking away from where we are in the field, and he says 3 words at the top of his lungs into the headset. And I don't know what they were. I don't know what they were in reference to, but I would imagine that the headset traffic wasn't a pleasant place to be. We got a small window into that with a season with Jimbo, and remember, you hear him, it sounded like a NASCAR race here, like,
yeah, right.
We can't do that.
Yeah.
Guys, we can't do that.
Right.
Well, I imagine that Mike was cutthroat on that particular channel this weekend with his assistants.
I would have liked to have heard what he had to say. Listen, this is a guy that takes a lot of pride in both his organization and his work ethic and what he's been able to do in his career. He loves football. I think he loves football players, because he knows, he's a former football player, what it is to sacrifice. He was an overachiever. So when you look at him, this is a guy that loves every aspect of football and how it affects your life and how it affects your work ethic and what your discipline and what you've got to do to succeed. And I think he loves running an organization, and he loves, seeing his guys succeed. So, listen, there's no doubt he's been dealt a difficult blow here and tough hand early on, but he's a angry, bitter, frustrated person. I don't mean that as a human being. I don't mean like in his everyday life walking around that he's, that way. But right now, this team is for him, it's got to be it's not only a work in, progress, but it's got to be immensely frustrating because this at times looks like it's anything but organized.
Yeah. No, they didn't look ready to go. They didn't look ready to play. Like the Jordan Travis touchdown drive early on, you're saying, wow, this guy makes plays. But then if you look at it through the scope of the rest of the offensive performance, and you're saying, ooh, we got lucky to score there, and there were a lot of warts that were presenting. Mm-hmm. We just thought it was, football can be weird sometimes.
And it's the first drive, weird, yeah, kind of cold out, whatever.
That's what it looked like the whole day.
I can't explain why guys can't catch. I don't understand how you get here and you just can't catch. I think some of these things that are the warts that we're seeing stem from a lack of confidence. It's really crazy how quickly they're susceptible to doubting themselves. And that's the cumulative effect of losing and being frustrated and going through a lot of changes and not having things work out. They seem to revert back. Like, they're front runners. There's no doubt they're front runners. If they get up and they're able to sustain that for even a little bit of time, they begin to believe, and all of a sudden everybody plays with a little bit more confidence, a little bit faster, a little bit tougher, and they're going to be in the game a little bit longer. But when they don't, boy, they become sheepish in a hurry.
I think that applies more to the defense than it does the offense because that ground game was still present. That O-line
still there,
and Jordan is a battler. But the receivers, I agree. There's no defending that.
Catch the ball, man.
Yeah. I you know what? I'd be partially surprised if any of the coaching staff has been home since the plane arrived on Saturday evening. I bet Norvell's kept him there.
I just don't know what you can do. Like, you can't. What's going to instill the confidence necessary to go make plays? Well, usually knowledge, preparation, right? That's the stuff that gives you the confidence. Think about it this way. If you're going to do a presentation, If you have to do it on the fly, willy-nilly, and you're the last guy chosen last second to be the one that represents the company, and you've got to speak before a large group, and you have very little time to write down your thoughts or put together a cogent speech that makes sense, that reveals the objectives or whatever it might be you have to do, that's a terrifying thing to have happen. That's awfully difficult to do. Whereas if you've spent 10 days prepping this thing, you know every aspect of what you're being asked to talk about, you've learned it thoroughly inside and out, you can't wait to walk to that dais. You can't wait to express what it is you represent, what your company is trying to do, and why it is you guys should be excited about it the same way I am. You can't wait to do that. Well, we look like a group that a lot of times just doesn't really, don't really know. Not real sure.
But that's where the ups and downs, this goes to a different place. There are such fundamental things that are wrong with the effort on Saturday. Such fundamental things where you get hit with a little bit of adversity and then you crumble. That's more than just the normal ups and downs of coming out of a bad culture and a bad system and a bad situation. I think that is atypical what we saw on Saturday for a group that should be exiting.
I don't know.
Valley.
I wish this is where I wish we could be in the locker room and see what's going on. Was there like a huge fight before the game amongst players? Was there, because everybody looked like they'd seen a ghost. It's so strange, that effort. It's coming off a big win. And I don't care if you think Florida State had no business winning that game and that they got awfully lucky. The point is they played differently. They played hard. They put themselves in a position. They made plays. They did things to win the game. Now, they had to hold on for dear life, and they were fortunate in some ways. But you can't do that. You can't be in a position to win a game like that if you hadn't flicked the switch and competed at the highest level, hadn't shown the intensity, the requisite intensity to compete and put yourself in a position to take a lead like that against a team like that. Carolina's offense is good. And for them to be up 31-7, but in that moment, they had to give of themselves. I know this is a different scheme, and every week football changes, and how you react to these different schemes and your knowledge of how to run against these different schemes is going to dictate the terms of what happens in the game. I understand that. But when we're talking about listlessness, what could have led to that? We're going to guess about this all week long. I don't know. NFL was good over the weekend, thank goodness. Kind of saved me. We had an electrifying World Series game to boot.
Man, it's
incredible ending
that we couldn't sit on that for a couple of days, and you had a new result last night because it takes the shine off of the talking of Game 4. But that's
crazy
for me. Now you had. I don't mean this as a poke or a dig. You've seen more World Series games than I have. You have a lot more to draw on.
I have indeed, Tom.
But
I was there in '86 to see Mets, Red Sox.
Yes.
As crazy an ending of any game you'll ever see.
I heard the nurses. I don't remember that, but I'm sure I heard the nurses.
Yeah.
That's the best World Series game I've ever seen. It had everything. You had base running. You had the ball being put in play. You had home runs. You had good pitching in big moments. It had everything.
It was really good for baseball. I mean, the sport of baseball, if you had a lot of eyes on the set, if you will, as they say, if you had a lot of people watching, that was really good for baseball. It was exhilarating. It was great competition. It had drama. It had execution. It had mistakes, but it had just a flair for the dramatic. Everything came down to the wire. It was a lot of fun. I actually, even last night's 4-2 loss, but from the Rays, that game's 3-2 pretty early, and this ought to get interesting. Becomes a bullpen game, and there were moments. The series has been an interesting series. The Rays, for a team that really doesn't hit all that well, have been able to do what they need to do to be in the series. I mean, they've come up with really big moments.
Yeah, I mean, if you say that you're going to hold the Dodgers to 4, that's passable.
Give yourself a chance.
That's not a D-. That's probably a B or a B+ effort, and you have a runner on third with nobody out, and you don't get him in.
Yeah, you don't get him in, and you could have done with a better effort from your starting pitcher, who looks like a deer in headlights half the time when he's out there. But other than that, listen, they got win Game 6 and give us that Game 7 that we all want. And let that be one for the ages. It's a lot of fun to watch. The end of the games yesterday in the 1 o'clock hour were unreal. The end of the Cleveland-Cincinnati game, obviously the end of the Atlanta-Detroit game, which every week Atlanta specializes in a new way to somehow screw that up and lose in the most unimaginable way.
Yep.
It really is somewhat remarkable. It's to the point now where I would venture a guess, since the season is long since over and you fired your coach and, all of this is what it is, but Atlanta fans almost got to be at the point where they chuckle when it happens now. I mean that. Where you would just be like, okay, this is going to happen again.
They're looking up 285 at Trevor Lawrence and saying, hey, it's possible now.
All of a sudden, they're on. And, if you go through the other games of the day, the Pittsburgh-Tennessee game comes down to the wire. It looks like Tennessee's going to steal a victory there that they would have, in my mind, at least for much of that game, had no business getting. But it did live up to the hype, which going into that game, it was the most excited I'd been for two teams that aren't anywhere on my radar on a regular basis. And as far as being favorites, I wanted to see that game. I was excited to see it. It came down to the wire again.
I'm kicking myself because when they kick the field goal to start the second half, Pittsburgh has a chance to go up 31-7, and they don't. At that point, I wanted to play live on Tennessee because that's what Tennessee does,
yeah, they find
especially
ways,
in that building. Like, they might not win, but I'm sure I could have gotten maybe Tennessee plus 10 or plus 9.5 or something like that.
One thing I love, and this is when, and you'll know in the first quarter most of the time, any game between any two teams, but especially when there's something on the line and or there's a reason to be angry. Listen for the sound of the pads. I mean, these guys are businessmen, right? Each of these trips are business trips. There's a little less emotion in professional football than there is in college football. A lot of this is about what is your job. The Bill Belichick, if you will, of football for all these guys is sort of do your job. What is your assignment? If you got to push this back, reroute this inside, that's what you do. If you mess that up, then you get a failing grade on that play, right? And so it's very, very structured. But every now and then, two teams will play, and it is evident that there is an extra charge of emotion in the air. They don't like each other, or they know it's big, or there's a message that needs to be sent for a later date. Man, that first quarter of the Steelers-Titans, you're like, woo, these boys came out here to play. And I had forgotten. This was a makeup. The Steelers were supposed to have a bye week. Those guys were pissed. They were supposed to be at the house chilling.
Yeah, that's right.
They're like, you guys screwed this up. and there was some popping going on early.
Yeah, that's why we loved Steelers and Ravens for so many years. And they're playing the heads up this weekend.
Yeah,
All
here
right,
you go.
sounds
Let's get
good.
it on. Yeah.
That's why we love Seahawks and 49ers.
We do. And
recent
by the way,
years.
congrats to the 49ers. Got that thing flipped back around now that they're getting healthy.
And that's the number one thing about Tampa Bay Buccaneers football that, I mean, you
Oh,
can hear
man.
it right here on these broadcasts. You can hear the pad level as Gene's calling the game, whether he's remotely or there in the building. My God, between what David and Whitehead and Winfield do,
Oh, yeah.
oh, they are
They hit.
angry.
My favorite player in the National Football League on defense is Devin White. I watch him on every play. I can't stop watching him. He is so fast at that size. It is ridiculous. And they do such a good job on the defensive line of keeping him clean and letting him go sideline to sideline to destroy people.
McClendon flashed for the Bucs yesterday.
He did.
That was a good
Yes,
pickup.
he did. But, I mean, White plays like he's coming to rip out your soul, man. It's crazy how fast he closes. Those outside zones, whoo, it's like he's not on your screen, and wham! Oh, my God. And you can see it. You look at opposing running backs, look at their face. They know that guy's coming. It's crazy to watch the way they run on those outside. They're seeing, is he funneling? Yeah, it's that little corner of my eye. Like, okay, I think that dude's coming because I saw the film. I watched the film this week.
So it's 24-20 with 7.5 to go.
And then it's good night, Irene.
That escalated quickly for John Gruden, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And I never felt like about midway through the second quarter, it never seemed like the Raiders could win that game to me. Not to me.
The way it flipped in the third quarter, the offense was sputtering. They go through droughts now.
They
that
do.
offense will. And then John had figured some stuff out where Waller, obviously, first of all, is a mismatch. Nobody can guard him. But he was doing that motion thing where he's getting a lot of favorable pre-snap reads. They had one key conversion that Carr had run, but it looked like John was in a rhythm. And then I think the low-key hero of that game for Tampa would be the line judge. Because that 4th and 1 was probably 4th and 2. If it's inches where I think that should have been, I bet John goes for it. But it was a long one and a half, and he kicks the field goal, and that's where at that point 24-20 Tampa goes down.
Control of the game, go down and score and call it a day.
If it's tied to 24 at that point, you've got the offense not feeling great about itself. The other key to the game was on that drive to put Tampa up 31-20 was Leonard Fournette's conversion on 3rd and long.
Yes, it was.
Just getting tiny and ramming for the final 2 or 3 yards to get the first down and get the chains moving.
It's nice to know that he can catch, too, by the way, because the other guy can't. Oh, good God, Ronald. I've never seen a sorrier set of hands on a professional athlete in all my life. It's every freaking week with that guy. My child catches that ball. What are you doing? Catch the damn ball, man. It's unsettling how often he drops passes. Time now for the Smart Choice of the Weekend, brought to you by University Lending Group. University Lending Group, buying a new home. Make the smart choice and head to ratecheckus.com. In 24 hours or less, you'll have peace of mind knowing that you're getting the lowest rates in Tallahassee with ratecheckus.com. I can tell you what it isn't. It's announcing that you want to sign Antonio Brown's sorry ass to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster, which is already prospering in a way that most people are envious of around the league and only seem to be getting better. Don't know why you would invite that guy into your locker room. He is a pariah, a horrible human being. There is nobody, save for Tom Brady, for whatever reason, that has ever vouched for that guy in a positive fashion. None of his former teammates, and that's who I care about most. His teammates in Pittsburgh, his teammates briefly in Oakland. The 2 seconds anybody's ever around him, they come away saying that guy is a world-class piece of garbage. Then there is the whole stuff that we know about, charges, sexual assault charges or accusations and the like to go along with assault and everything else where you have with the movers. And dude's a terrible human being.
And he's already had 3 or 4 chances.
Yeah.
This will be a fun edition of the Scuttlebucks this week, I think, because we can delve into it. But for my money, as a Buccaneers fan, I will not support the Buccaneers while he suits up and plays for them. I'll enjoy the Monday night game next week, and I'll enjoy the first game when he's no longer a part of the team. Hopefully he fails the physical or the NFL suspends him further.
Well, they are still investigating the civil suit and all the stuff that's going on there. The NFL is still investigating. He may not ever be cleared to play.
And, morals in the NFL and being a fan
loose.
of the NFL is like politics and truth-telling. They don't go together.
Right.
But this guy's a bridge too far for me. It would be like if the Buccaneers signed Tyreek Hill or Adrian Peterson. I can't do it. I can't support it. But I'll watch the games and I'll break them down, and I'll be happy for guys like, Levante David, who's a model citizen, or Mike Evans, who does a lot of things for the local community. I'll be happy for those players, but I will derive no joy as a Buccaneers fan of any success that we have with Antonio Brown on the field.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't happen. Expressed as much over the weekend. I don't know why you do it, though. I also don't think it makes any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Receiver's not your problem. You don't really have too many problems right now, but that's not one of them. And there's a guy that, couldn't get right when $40 million was on the line in Oakland and then got a chance in New England. And that's a place where people have gone to resurrect their career and fly right. Couldn't do it there either. I just don't know why you're inviting that in.
The smart choice of the weekend, though, was playing Notre Dame against Pitt. That was a good choice.
Got to give you credit there. Because I jumped on it because of you, and yes, doff of the cap, we both took home a victory.
That number
there
was only 10.
It was an easy win for Notre Dame. They look more like the team that a lot of people think is the second best team in the ACC. Another smart choice would be taking Syracuse plus 46.5. Tall boys, baby. Here we go. That's what that is. We had us a one-score game late in the third quarter of that one.
Ooh, you came with the good stuff, natties.
Yeah, tall boys coming my way there. On principle, you got to do it. I mean,
These tall boys
46
aren't
and a
gonna
half.
by themselves, boys.
I couldn't believe it when I looked up at the screen at one point, whatever that was. It was like.
And Dabo did the indignant thing in the post-game press conference. Didn't we not win this game by 21? Why are all these questions negative? Why are y'all being negative?
That was a one-score game late in the second half, Dabo. But, I do think Clemson plays bored a lot of times. You never know when. I didn't know this, but there's word on the street that he hates Collins at Georgia Tech. Hates him. Wants to run it up on him every time he faces him.
Really?
Hates him. He has a problem with him.
They play every year. That's good news for us.
We need to keep that in mind. Keep it in the memory bank. They went through the motions in this one, but they wanted to lay a number on Georgia Tech. So there's that. Ira Schoffel going to join us next. Stay tuned. 2, Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Hope this Monday is treating you well. Appreciate you joining in to us. By the way, we're online at ESPNTallahassee.com if you want to stream it. Thanks to you who are bopping around, listening in your car, on the radio. Maybe you're at work. Maybe you're working hard at the post office. We got a lot of listeners there. Hello, all you hard workers. We do appreciate what you do. Same to my UPS and FedEx guys that I see around town that listen to the show. It's always an honor to hear that. So, doff the cap to you guys. Also on YouTube, if you want to watch the program as we perform it. This hour, obviously, is on a Monday, the time we bring in our good buddy Ira Schoffel. All guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway, 833 West Gain Street, online at phoneherotlh.com. I would always encourage you guys, go over to warchant.com and catch up. Read, it may be tough after a 48-16 loss, but you're going to want to hear some insight, including Ira's 3-2-1 column. It's there right now. We welcome him in. Ira Schoffel, warchant.com, the guest. Hello, Ira. How are you, brother?
I'm great, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Enough time. When a game goes like that and it's early in the day, you get that added time to let it really sink in and kind of you can work out the frustrations into the night, well on into the Sunday. But by the time you roll around on Monday, you're good to go. It wasn't a night game, so I've fully vetted it. I've even gone back and watched it a second time because I found myself somewhat incredulous by what I was seeing defensively. Now, there's enough blame to go around on the offense and the defense. Nothing really special from Saturday at all from either unit. I know from reading your column, the 3-2-1 column, that you had some observations and questions and a prediction as well. Big picture, though, for our listeners, for those that haven't got a chance to go read that. Your thoughts now, here we sit on Monday. You've pinned this piece. What are you thinking about what you saw? Because to me, that was the most disappointing game of the season. More than Miami, more than Georgia Tech, certainly more than Notre Dame. That was the worst loss of the season, and it was a huge step back in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, for defensively, it was the worst game of the season by far. Letting De'Ara King score a lot of points or letting Notre Dame's rushing attack do a lot of damage. I mean, there's not as much shame in that.
Right.
Louisville had not been doing anything offensively, and really they didn't do anything offensively in this game. I mean, I think that's the most frustrating thing is you look at those plays and literally FSU offered no resistance at all. They didn't do anything against the run. They didn't do anything against the pass. Honestly, if FSU hadn't practiced for 2 weeks and just played that game, I'm not sure they could have done any worse defensively than they did. So that, from that standpoint, I mean, I get your point. I mean, it's demoralizing when the defense literally does nothing. And the offense got off to a slow start. I mean, but, I think it was a combination of, they did have the touchdown on the first drive with Jordan being Jordan. But but after that, they had a couple of drop passes, a couple of mistakes here or there, maybe a missed throw. And so the offense wasn't quite as sharp, which isn't too surprising. But the problem was the defense just kept giving up 7 and 7 in 3 plays or 5 plays. So, all of a sudden it's 28-7. And even with that, though, the Florida State, gets back to 28-14, or 31-14, and going to halftime. And if you could just get a stop at some point, I felt like the offense maybe could turn around. But Jordan also got banged up during the game, and at that point, the ship has sailed. So, from a big picture standpoint, I don't think this team's a whole lot different than what I thought it was a week ago. I wasn't over the moon when they beat North Carolina in terms of thinking, okay, all their problems are solved. And I don't think the season's over now because of what we saw on Saturday, but there are some key issues that have to be addressed for sure.
Yeah, I didn't think they were good because they beat North Carolina and that suddenly they would win all their games. I did think, and I predicted, I thought they'd win this game against Louisville because Louisville had lost 4 straight and didn't look like a good football team at all. There was really nothing that Louisville could hang their hat on. They do have 2 skill players that are really, really talented, and I guess 3. And you thought that if you could eliminate some big plays, you'd have an opportunity to be in this game and win this game, or at least I did. I think what does have me concerned is there are some personnel decisions on the defensive side of the ball at key points in the game. There are also certain alignments and certain things they're doing defensively that seems to be a step backwards. They weren't good on defense at any point this year, but they weren't this kind of bad, I go through, there's 6 different times in this game where you're wondering, and Ira, you pointed it out in one situation in your column, there's at least 6 situations where I'm looking on the field and I'm wondering why it is that Adam Fuller is asking certain players to cover certain guys in man coverage. And also why certain personnel is not in the game, such as when you have Louisville backed up on their 3. I understand you've got a rotation that you're working through on the defensive line, but if you don't have your best defensive player on the field when you have an impact play forthcoming, then you need to rethink your rotation. They don't seem to have a rhyme or reason to some of what we're seeing on that side of the ball, and that may very well be why, and I'll ask you this question, Mike Norvell calls out his defensive coordinator in the postgame. I think he probably immediately regretted it, but we all heard it. That ain't good.
Yeah, I mean, I think to some degree, and again, first 5-6 games of a defensive coordinator's tenure, I try to find ways to give the benefit of the doubt because I don't want to jump to conclusions. And I think that I think you saw early this season he tried to play more zone. That didn't work. He realized these guys can't play zone. Then he went to more man. He's tried the 4-man front. He's tried the 3-man front. There's not and he's played. God knows he's played probably 40 different guys on defense. So they've tried a lot of different options and have not found anything that works. But I guess what concerned me about that game was it almost looked like they were playing Louisville straight up, like that. It didn't matter what who from their personnel standpoint, whatever Louisville was doing. Now, I guess I don't know. Maybe Des Fitzpatrick is so dangerous as a receiver, even though he hasn't done anything close to what Tutu Atwell has done. Maybe they felt like there was times that Asante needed to be on him, but I mean, they were shorthanded. Nico Dotson didn't play.
Yeah,
Jarian Jones was suited up but didn't play a whole lot. So maybe that's how you end up down at Jarvis Brownlee. But I just think I really just feel like Asante Samuel has to be on their best receiver just about at all times, and he wasn't on him nearly that much. And then, again, their running back is a dynamic player. I just don't understand why they were so aggressive going after the quarterback. They got beat. They got killed in some blitzes that I just didn't understand. But then, again, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt earlier this season, when you had a young quarterback with Jeff Sims, they didn't blitz him as much. And then everybody's like, well, why wouldn't you come after a young quarterback? So in this situation, it's like, why wouldn't you come after their quarterback? So, I just think he clearly has no feel. I don't think Adam Fuller has any feel for what they can do, what he's got. And I don't think they believe in what they're being asked to do. It's just a mess. The problem is, this isn't the NFL where you can go find a bunch of free agents. I mean, he's got to make the best of what we have. And I know I'm rambling here, but the big concern I would have right now is on the offensive side of the football, they're making the best of what they have. Now, this game was bad, but overall, over the course of the season, they've figured out what pieces they have, what they can work with, and found out something they can do. It's not necessarily what they wanted to do, but they found a way to move the football. Mm-hmm. Defensively, you haven't seen that at all. They haven't identified anything in 6 games that they can build upon.
Well, and I think what's difficult, Ira, you're right. Listen, they've failed in man and they failed in zone and they failed in combinations of the two. But I would say this, situationally, they seem to be absolutely at a loss. And that was what bothers me. I'll give you an example, a specific one. 2nd and 24 goes to a 58-yard touchdown. You can't tell me. How does anybody get behind you to that extent? What are we running? On 2nd and 24, there's a 58-yard touchdown pass. These situations happened a lot. You got 3rd and 8, you give up the middle of the field. There's nobody on your television set that's covering the middle of the field. It's the easiest conversion that you'll find. It happens all the time with this defense, and it's well, that's awfully tough to stomach, and I agree. Listen, I'm not here today saying Adam Fuller has to be fired, but I'm also not here saying that a boy, because he's not doing anything right now that suggests they're improving. And to your point, I think your overall point in the column is that it's inexcusable to look this bad at this point in the season, to not have some semblance of progress being made on that side of the ball. Again, I think in due time we'll see it. I do think they have to weed some guys out of here. I do think it's been incredibly difficult without a spring, and then really kind of a screwed up fall to boot. But this is unsettling. And, and we go to the other side of the ball where obviously the receivers had themselves a day for the ages in a way that I don't know that I've ever seen at Florida State. Anyhow, I haven't seen that. Those kids should be ashamed of themselves. That was an embarrassment. And I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, Jesus,
like literally, I don't think I've ever seen, unless you're like maybe like a high school team of receivers going up against like an NFL team of defensive backs. Like
it was crazy.
Louisville's DBs had one interception on the season, so I don't think it's the greatest secondary in college football. Florida State didn't win one 50-50 ball, I don't think, and then they dropped 6 other passes that were wide. I mean,
you're being kind, sir. They had somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 drops by my count, but yes, 6 that were real
drops. The standard for the official drops,
right?
Back keepers must be there's nobody within 10 yards of because there were plenty of other drops as well.
And in addition to those drops, listen, I understand he's hurt. Jordan Travis didn't play well, but the situation you have with him, because he should have had 3 more picks. But the thing I would say is with Jordan, we know what he is. He's a spark plug with his legs. Everything he does with his legs sets up his ability to throw. He's not a drop-back passer. We've been saying this all along. I really don't like his throwing arm. I think he's barely average when it comes to just if it's an obvious passing down and he's got to throw and they keep him in the pocket, we're dead. We're dead. So, his injury really did hurt him here because once they figured out, well, he ain't going to run, then we were in deep trouble, and he can't make those throws into those windows. And so now, that's just it leaves you bereft of hope.
Yeah, and the problem is you're not going to be able to get into those 3rd and 1s or 2nd and 2s if he can't do what he can do as a runner
right
early in the down. So that and to me that's the biggest question on the offensive side going forward is if. I went back and watched the play. I think I know where he got hurt. It was in the second quarter. When he re-aggravated it in the second quarter, he kind of got slung down and braced himself with that left arm, and I think it jarred it. But if that's what it's going to be, where, if he gets hit at all, he's going to be done. It's hard to say you need to go with him as a starting quarterback because those plays are going to happen, whether or not, he needs to run to have a chance, and if he runs, he's going to get tackled at some point. So then then what are your options? Because I'm not saying you shut the door on him completely, but maybe he becomes a package guy as opposed to a 60, 70 snap guy. And so maybe Chuba Purdy, and again, the guy was 0 for 9 because thanks to the help of his receiving core in his first college debut. But maybe he's an option. I don't see a scenario where you go back to James Blackman. And I also don't think Tate Rodemaker's ready, at least in this offense. So, to me, if Jordan is basically going to be one hit or one tackle away from being in that kind of pain again and being that limited again, then I really think you have to look at Chuba Purdy, and that may be tough, but at least you're working towards the future.
Well, they're 2-4. Why wouldn't you? You might as well. You're 2-4. It's a lost year. It's a crazy year. It's one with an asterisk next to it anyhow, in my mind. I would think about it, and if you're going to do it, now would be the time. You've got 2 weeks to get him ready for Pitt and then NC State. Now, obviously, none of us want to be present when Clemson comes to town. That may be the ugliest game Florida State's ever played. But you've got some winnable games, is my point. Pitt, NC State, Virginia, Duke, all winnable games. And you can't really be reliant on a guy who is right now battling injury. So maybe you do have to make that move. Ira, one other thing here, and I don't think this comes as any great insight to people listening here, but at various points this season, and I'm just curious if it struck you this way, because I know what recruiting rankings say. But I'll tell you what, when I look out on the football field and just kind of assess what I'm watching, does it ever occur to you, it did on Saturday, and it did previous this year too, do you ever come across your mind where you say, they don't have any good players? Like, do you ever, when you look out there, do you ever say to yourself, they don't have anybody that can play? Like, there's, obviously, Tamorrion Terry can play. He's had one good game this year, and then he's been hurt. He didn't do anything previous. Marvin can play. I thought the interior of the defensive line, actually, it gets lost here, played well. But they're not helped because backside's always open for business. So it doesn't really matter if you get penetration inside. The guys are going to just make you miss and bounce outside, and nobody's going to contain. But, like, the linebackers can't play. The secondary can't play aside from Asante Samuel. Like, I just look out there and I think, well, they don't have any good players.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of both. I would say two things. One, that from an athletic standpoint, they have some guys that are limited, no question. And there were a couple plays in that game. You know, a guy that we like, I think that we've noticed when we've been out of practice before is a guy that we'd like to see maybe get more action. Jordan Young at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Well, there was a play in that game where he makes a move on a guy, and if he's a Florida State wide receiver,
he's gone.
He needs to be gone. And instead, the guy recovers and is running stride for stride with it. So, like, you don't have and there's several positions like that where there's just not the elite speed. But even with that, you can make plays on the ball. You can on both sides, receivers and defense backs can make plays on the ball. So, and I don't know if that's ability as much as it is confidence, as much as it is determination, as much as it is competitiveness. I don't know. I think there's some situations like that where they are limited, but you also have some situations where guys just aren't competing. And you can be moving your legs and pumping your arms and not really running full speed, not really giving great effort and competing. And I think you see some of that as well.
Just take it over to Tom Brown Park, not on my football field on a Saturday. I don't need to see the guys that are just moving their legs and pumping their arms and not doing anything, because I see it a lot. I do. I look all around and I'm like, yeah, he can't play. He can't play. He can't play. That guy can't play. Look at this sorry ass. He can't play. It's just troubling.
I do. I mean, to your overall point, though, yeah, I mean, they've got to continue flipping this roster. I mean, I think they've identified some things, some guys that I think you can win with. But there's a bunch of guys who have not proven they can. Now, they can be front runners if you're ahead, and that's why.
That's another problem, Ira, though. You know that, right? They are front runners. That's who they are.
Yeah, and that's why I thought that Louisville game, to me, it was such a toss-up, because I felt like if Florida State gets up by 14 or 21 points, Louisville might fold.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough on fans, man. It's really hard to watch a team that doesn't have a lot of heart and also isn't very talented and at times doesn't look to be coached very well. That's a deadly triumvirate. That's a whole lot of why am I watching this nonsense? It's painful. Always appreciate it, brother. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Be well.
See you, Jeff. Take care.
All right, take care. Yeah, listen, I don't want to call a specific player out, but, as you're watching the game unfold, there are lots of times where you kind of, they call them Jags, just another guy. Florida State's got a lot of Jags, man. A lot of Jags, just another guy. Like, and let me say this. I base all of that on a standard that I hold Florida State players to. So, if a couple of those guys are starting at Marshall or Tulane, you're like, that's pretty good for Tulane. That guy's got a little something to him. But when you're up here and when your goal is to win a conference title at a Power 5 and then obviously get back to where you can win national titles, you watch us play and then flip around and just watch obviously Clemson or Alabama or even Georgia. There's about 4 or 5 teams, Ohio State certainly. Watch them play and you'll go, we're light years away. Like that. There's a lot of times you find yourself saying there's nobody on our team that would start for that team. That just should never happen at Florida State. And that's not Norvell's fault. I mean, obviously this is the roster he's got. But when you have that and then you have uncertainty and you have a lack of confidence and you have COVID, well, I mean, it all adds up to incredibly inconsistent play. I don't think I've seen Mike Norvell more disappointed than what I saw on Saturday when he came in for his press conference. If you watch that, look at him, man. He is devastated. I think he was mad after Miami because of some of the things that he saw, but I don't think he was as disappointed, if that makes sense. This disappointed him because I think it's true. It looks like, Ira said something like, you wouldn't think had they had no practices this past week that they could look any worse. So clearly you've got some guys with bad habits. You got some guys that revert back to those bad habits, guys who mentally are weak, who are broken, And when things start to go south for them, it looks like they curl up in the fetal position and they don't fight. They don't fight. And, that's what elicits the anger from fans is when you got guys that are kind of we got a lot of dudes that just occupy space. Whole lot of guys that are just out there occupying space. They ain't playing football. There's occupying space. I'll kind of run over here a little bit, and I'll run over here because I think I'm supposed to. But there's no, I'm going to bust this guy up. There's no, I'm going to make a play. There are no bad intentions upon arrival. So, and then you get the nonsense that's grown so old so fast for so long now, and that's the finger wag when you're down by 38 and you didn't even make a play. You were beat on the play. You should have picked the ball off. The guy dropped it, and then you're going to finger wag like an ass? You look like a clown. And that's salt in the wound. And we see that every week. We see that all the time. That's a toughie. Chef Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. All right, so as the week progresses, you'll note that I'm going to take a couple days off because it's a bye week and we didn't get to do it before the season like we ordinarily do. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. But I also have obligations to you guys and to clients, and one of them is to make sure that we do the Wicked Which giveaway. Wednesday is when that normally takes place. I'm not going to be here on Wednesday, so I wanted to be sure that we did it right now, and you have a chance to win not one but two Wickeds. Two Wickeds. Right now, 523-3776, caller 4, 523-3776. There you go. That's right. Sometimes I forget I know the number. What are you going to do? Get you a Which Superior sandwich. 5 meats, 3 cheeses of pure goodness from our friends at Which. You know what's fun to do, and I hadn't done this in a long time. And Matthew, I bet you that you have not done this in a long time, but I'll be curious. Hula hooping. Hula hooping's fun. I was cleaning out the garage over the weekend, right around the third quarter of the Knowles game. It was about time to take it out to the garage. My wife and I have been frustrated with the condition of the garage. We tend to, I don't know about your house, but at our house, when you're doing a massive cleanup, our friends at Brian Barnhart Flooring America came in and put down some beautiful floors. Well, that required me to get off my ass and get rid of some things that were in the closets of the house, you know. You got the hallway closet where pretty much the linen goes, but there's a few other things there. Then there's the closet in our bedroom where obviously my clothes, my wife's clothes are housed. But then there's a lot of other knickknacks and things. You're like, I don't really want to get rid of that, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know if I'm ever going to use it again. And there's the hall closet, the one that's the corridor there by the front door where the jackets live. But also some suitcases with things that I'm like, I don't even know what's in there. I put those in there when we moved into the house, and I haven't checked since. I'm sure I loaded them with something I thought was valuable at the time, but if I have not opened them and looked at what's in there in 14 years, it's probably not valuable. Probably not something that I need. And here, I'm the guy that became a stickler because I got so tired of all this extra stuff in our house. I said to my wife, if we haven't used, unless it's like a family heirloom, like you don't get rid of, I'm not getting rid of your birth certificate. But I mean, if you have stuff laying around your house, it could be a stereo of some kind. It could be an old TV. It could be a video game system. It could just be, I don't know, stuffed animals. If somebody hasn't physically used that thing in more than a year, it's got to go. It's got to go. So I put down that rule, and then I, didn't really follow up because all that rule made me do was, well, let me move you to the garage till I can get to you. And I moved everything out of the garage. And the next, and then I go out in the garage and get my tools on the rare occasion that I can actually fix anything, and or go grab something else that I might need in the house. And I go out there and I just stare at all that superfluous nonsense, and I think, what are we doing here? But as I began to clean some of that stuff up over the weekend, while the Knowles were steady getting blown out in garbage time, because I knew I was going to have to go back and watch the game again, so I didn't need to, didn't need to sit there and whip myself over and over and over again as I watched that game. So I go out there and I start moving stuff around. And I go, what is that? That's a hula hoop. And I thought about it, and I started thinking, when was the last time you even tried to do the hula hoop? And then it occurred to me that it might have been back in college at some party. That's the kind of thing that happens at a college party. Somebody's hula hooping drunk out front for no reason. That's the funny thing about college parties in general. Like if you roll up to a party and it's 2 p.m. and people are having a good time and there's just some chick or some dude hula hooping off to the side, you don't even think, well, isn't that odd? There's a grown-up using a hula hoop. You go, oh, yeah, it's that kind of party. All right. That's what I like to see. So I got the hula hoop out. I walked it out front, and I began to hula hoop, and it was much to my kids' delight. They thought it was hilarious. They're like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm hula hooping, and I'm good at it. Hula hoop with the best of them. I'll get that sucker whipping. We were going. And then I started thinking, this is a lot of fun. This is an underrated activity, hula hooping is. It makes you laugh to see other people hula hoop. It makes you smile when you're the one hula hooping. Really, that's a bravo kind of activity. There aren't too many things that make you laugh when somebody else does it and makes you smile when you do it. Think about how few things in your lifetime or your life on a daily basis that could be said about. Something that makes you laugh when the other person's doing it, but then when you're doing it, you get joy too. I mean, aren't too many things. Like when my kids would run around the house and fall down because they were too little and they weren't coordinated yet, I would crack up. I thought it was awesome, and I'd pick them up and we'd laugh. But if I run around the house, it doesn't give me any joy. So think about it. It's pretty one-sided most of the time. So my suggestion to you is maybe while you're out getting that which superior sandwich, you pick you up a hula hoop. It's more fun than you realize. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
To Muhammad Ali and me, you're gonna fall for me so far.
Real quick reminder, if you have a need for emergency service as it pertains to plumbing, call my friends at Keith McNeil Plumbing, 850-562-5504. They're the best in the business. They can help you with just about everything you need, whether it's high-pressure jet service and when they clean the surfaces for you. They've got, obviously, faucets and leaks and drips, low water pressure problems, sewer replacement. They'll hook up appliances for you. Major and minor remodeling, they do that too. So I just want to make you aware. That's who I use at my house, Keith McNeil Plumbing. They've been great with us. 850-562-5504. I could watch the play in which Budda Baker gets hawked down by DK Metcalf 50 times. I've seen it at least 20, but I want to keep watching it. Each and every time I watch it, I notice something else. It's just not fair to be that big and that fast. But my favorite part, without question, isn't that DK Metcalf hawks down Budda Baker, who, by the way, runs a 4.45. That's what he ran at the Combine. So it's not like you're catching somebody who runs a 4.78 and, you're a 4.4 guy. This dude can fly. Budda Baker can. He said today, and I got to give Budda Baker credit. If for those that didn't see the play, sorry, last night's thrilling Seattle-Arizona football.
It was amazing.
Great game. I stayed up to the bitter end, watched the whole thing.
They are always money on Sunday Night Football. The Seahawks mean you're going to be riveted.
You just can't go to bed. You're never able to go to bed. But if you didn't see it, Seattle's going in to score, and then it's a terrible throw. I mean, he clearly didn't see Budda Baker, but he just Russell lofts this little thing. He thinks it's a walk-in, and he throws this floater out in the flat, and it's a recipe for what is ordinarily a pick six if that gets taken back. Budda picks it off, jumps in front, and is flying down the sideline. And this isn't a case where a defensive back doesn't see somebody and thinks he's gone and begins to let up only to be made a fool of. He is on the gas pedal. My favorite part is, let me see what yard line this is, because when it happens, it's funny. You can almost see like the look on his face. You can't see into a helmet, obviously. This would be, right about the 10 or 15 yard line. He does a little glance back because I think he's about ready to put his arm up and celebrate. And there's DK Metcalf, all 6'4", 240+ pounds of monster, hawking him down.
Yep, he hears somehow. The lack of fans, right, in the building.
He hears it. It's terrifying.
What the hell is that?
It's terrifying. Like, when you watch it, you kind of almost cringe for him. Like, oh, the bad man's coming. Run. Because I'm sitting there watching that, and I'm thinking, why is this going off incessantly? By the way, my phone, I've got it on vibrate.
The world has ended.
Jesus.
Pack it up. Let's go.
But as I'm sitting there, I'm absolutely stunned. And he looks back, and it's just this futile little hand gesture, like, please don't. So, watch it again. He lifts his right hand. He's holding the ball in his left hand, which is towards the sideline. He pulls his right hand up as if to go, please don't hurt me. It's the most feeble gesture of, oh, no. And then, obviously, he's engulfed and slung to the ground. And but his credit today, he said, after the game, on his Twitter feed, he mentioned that he'd never been hawked, and he gave him all kinds of love to DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
And then today he said, I've never been hawked down in my entire life, not from junior football, not in high school, not in college. Nobody has ever caught me.
Well, and he's an absurd person just to look at, Metcalf, that is.
Remember the pictures before the draft?
He is Adonis on steroids.
Yeah, he's a massive man. Yeah, so Baker ran a 4.45 at the NFL Combine. Metcalf ran a 4.33 and a 4.4. The 4.33, I think, was unofficial at 240 pounds.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. My son asks me all the time the difference from, I always tell him, because I'll see, every Sunday you watch the NFL, you see freaks of nature. Devin White, every time the Bucs play, does something.
Sure.
Every single time the Bucs play, Devin White does something where I go, nobody that big should be able to do that.
Well, what about the Carlos Williams escort for the Kermit Whitfield
Correct.
touchdown?
Oh, that's insane. Yeah, he hawks him down.
yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it still doesn't. When you watch it, you're like,
Well, and
look
he
at
hit
that.
like 21.9 or 22 miles an hour in practice. Remember, that was when they first started releasing the top end speed stuff.
Right.
And the GPS system clocked Carlos in the high 21s or low 22s, and that's precisely the range that these two guys are running. Last night, Buddha didn't quite hit 22. Metcalf certainly did. He had about 22.6.
Yeah, well, and the difference between a 4.45 and a 4.33 is on display for you to watch.
What's their 80 time?
Oh, we need to go back and look at that. I mean, that is unreal. Chris Long brought something up. I saw his tweet, and I had forgotten about this, and I got to give him credit. He's right. He was saying that this was one of the most impressive hawk downs he'd ever seen. There are, in my lifetime, Darryl Green did it a lot.
There it
He
is.
used to do it all the time.
It looks like it's a CGI image of somebody else.
Darryl Green did a hawk down that is, I mean, it's uncomfortable. You're like, that's not. This is like, is he an alien? That shouldn't happen.
He's got 4 or 5 of those in his career highlight reel.
But the best one, and this is the one where you have to compare size and effort and angle, and it's Ben Coates hawking down Champ Bailey. So
Really?
Ben Coates, tight end, Patriots, goes
Yeah.
across the field. He's on the other side. Champ Bailey picks this off on the goal line. He's on the other side. So he has to go across to get him here.
Yeah.
Go pull that up. Or is
That
it Benjamin
playoff-
Watson? Is that Watson or Coates? It's Coates, I think.
Ben Watson.
It's Watson. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. It's Benjamin Watson against Champ Bailey.
Playoff game? I feel
It's
like I remember this.
insane. It's a huge play. Watch how far. He runs like 120 yards because he's so far back in the end zone and across the field.
Yeah. Julio has one, too, in his career.
Oh, Julio hawks people down all the time.
He's got like a tackle highlight reel that was legitimate.
Julio's
It takes about a
nasty.
minute and a half.
Julio's nasty. Yeah, I mean.
So this is from 2011, this video, Benjamin Watson tackle saving touchdown.
Yeah, watch this run. Are you watching that?
It's I don't know how it's a 3-minute video.
Well,
but,
maybe they're just building towards it. I don't know. There's a.
Okay,
They're going to
yeah.
show every angle. It is ridiculous. But this,
Oh, man.
it's the kind of thing that makes you love him.
Yeah, so they've got the all 22 footage of this. Again, the title of the video doesn't really make sense, but it's Benjamin Watson tackle saving touchdown. The
Against Champ
touchdown
Bailey.
saving tackle should
Yeah.
be. But it's about the 155 mark. You see Teddy Bruschi and his there you go. So Champ Bailey's on the goal line. He's about 1 yard deep in the end zone, and Ben Watson is all the way on the other side by the 10-yard
Yes.
line. And here you go.
Yes.
Ben is acting as the hypotenuse of this right triangle.
It's a freaking tight end. He's a tight end. That should never happen.
wow.
Yeah.
I remember that play.
Yeah. That's high on the list.
I feel like that was from the 05-06 playoffs. I could
It's
be
an
wrong, though.
amazing play, but I had forgotten about it. And then, well, hawkdowns are fun in general. But Darryl Green has, and by the way, did I ever tell you this story while we're on the subject? Tommy Carter, I've mentioned him a lot. He was our starting quarterback my senior year at Lakewood. And if you talk to William Floyd or anybody else who was on that team, they will talk to you for hours about Tommy Carter, who went on to play in the NFL for 9 years as a corner. He went and played at Notre Dame. He was drafted, I think, 13th or 17th overall in the first round. Came out early his junior season. He had never even played defense when he was in high school. When he got to Notre Dame, they switched him to corner. But he's the best athlete I think I've ever been around. I used to see him. I used to intentionally race him in the 40 because I knew he was going to humiliate me. But in order to avoid extreme humiliation, you ran harder than you would ever run against anybody else because that guy had like 4.2 speed. He was unreal. He won state. He did everything. He also had like a 42-inch vertical. He was 5'10". He used to dunk and put his whole arm in upside down, all kinds of stuff. Crazy athlete. Why do I bring him up? He went to Washington. He played for the Bears, for Washington, and also for Cincinnati at the very end of his career. Anyhow, his first interception was against Dan Marino. That's really cool. But he played with Darryl Green at the end of Darryl Green's career. Tommy outran Rocket Ishmael when he got to Notre Dame as a freshman, and everybody was blown away. So, again, Tommy's the fastest kid I ever saw. And he said that when he got to Washington, I mean, Darryl Green's an old man. And people were like, so everybody says you're fast. He's fast as that guy. And he said, Darrell Green was faster than him. And Darrell Green was like 35
Oh,
years
my
old.
God. Yeah, no, Darrell Green's
Yeah,
got
dude,
all
that's
clips.
the kind of wheels.
So that Ben Watson play was, in fact, I know where I was.
Yeah.
That is spooky. I know where I was when I watched it. That was the 05-06 NFL playoffs.
Yeah, it's a crazy play.
Yeah.
I remember the play, and then I couldn't remember the year. But, yeah, I remember thinking a tight end should not be able to do that.
I was at an old friend's house off of Fred Russell. He had like one of those loft things, and we were playing beer pong as a freshman in college, and we saw Champ Bailey. Like, oh, Champ House call, Champ House. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a play.
It's a really a hell of a play. It's unimaginable. Wow. Yeah, and then there's, what's his name? The Steelers' big-ass, it's in the commercial, Harrison or whatever his name is, the dirty linebacker.
Well, Harrison scored, and Larry Fitz almost got him.
But Larry almost got him, but
Yeah.
I was more impressed with Harrison. That's a long way for a
Yeah,
big
it
man
was.
to run.
Yeah, he was supposed to bring pressure. Actually, it was a Kendo play. Of
Yeah.
course, it was a bigger moment than the Kendo moment, but it was the same idea. Where
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
supposed to blitz, and he's like, it doesn't feel right. I'm going to drop. And then it turned into that
I mean,
play.
that's a hell of a play.
And it was all or nothing because the time
That
expired
and
in
a
the
half.
second quarter.
That's right. Well, that's why I was mad that he got in. I'm like, how do you not catch that big son of a bitch? Somebody's got to be able
Yeah.
to catch that guy.
Oh.
But he's a better athlete than you realize.
Poor Larry Fitz. He deserved
Oh,
immortality in that
I
game,
know.
and he's totally forgotten.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. That's also the best pass I've ever seen in Super Bowl history. The Roethlisberger pass. Not once, but twice.
Boy, Jameis has a ton of dimes in his Bucs career, but that throw to Miller yesterday.
Best throw I've seen a Buccaneer quarterback ever. Best throw ever. I mean, it
That
is
was-
dropped in the bucket.
I mean, good Lord.
I think I texted you after. I was sitting there staring at the screen. I go, Bryce, get in here.
Yeah.
Get in here and look at this throw. Mm-hmm. That was phenomenal.
I did the same with Jamie. I said, you need to see this.
It's unreal.
You just need to see it.
That's the only place he could put it.
Yeah.
And it's
Because I'm doing the math. For some reason, I was fixed on the ball. Like, usually you
It
follow
seemed
the
like he
receiver.
threw it too high at first.
Yeah.
You're like, what do you do? Okay.
And I'm doing the calculation. I'm
Yeah,
like,
the
yeah,
arc.
that's too deep. And then it just starts dropping.
Oh, it's
my
unreal. He had
God.
Well, he had 2 or 3 yesterday though. There's one to the far side on the smash with Gronk that he hits. It's the second week in a row that he's thrown one in that bucket. There's nothing wrong with him right now.
No.
He's not going to be a problem. There's nothing wrong with him. Now let's see late in the year if anything happens. But when we talk about old guys throwing the ball, you're much more concerned when you watch Cam Newton throw a football. Like when you watch Cam Newton throw a football right now, did you watch the sequence before he got benched? Did you see that on Red Zone or anything?
Oh, when he rolls left and he throws the pick?
Well, yes, but the entire drive prior to that, when you watch the sequence of events, his throws, something's wrong.
Yeah, well, and
He's either hurt or just shot.
look
We're
at his
done
eyes
here.
on the bench when Bill
he's
goes
done.
and tells him, I'm going to have to do it. Like, he doesn't fight him back. He's like, I know.
Oh, it was kind of heartbreaking.
Kind of.
I mean, I don't care about the Patriots at all, and I don't care about Cam Newton. But, I mean, it's like a guy, that kind of looked like a guy who knew he couldn't play anymore.
Yeah, well, he's all too happy to taunt anybody else. So
No, I know, I get that. I'm saying I'm not a huge fan. Also, you can dive on a fumble, in the Super Bowl.
yeah,
But
he did for Bill.
but I mean, I'm sitting there looking. That conversation was brief. It was direct. It was understood, and the look on his face was that of a guy that knows. I don't know, man. I mean, he may need surgery.
It's the guy looking in the dugout.
Yeah,
He's looking at his manager. He's
yeah.
like, I don't belong on this mound. Come on.
Oh, sometimes those are tough, especially when a guy's late in his career.
Oh, there are many levels to it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you got to
yeah.
appreciate the greatness. It was unique, and it's probably over. Maybe he could be a package player in the future here and
Yeah,
jump
just
on a
'cause he's
Super
so
Bowl
massive,
team, and
yeah,
he
yeah.
could be a short yardage guy. He comes in like think about. I mean, Sean Payton, he'd find a reason to bring somebody like Cam Newton in. It's third and one.
Well, 3rd and 1, yeah, you could, but maybe he could be a tight end. I know everybody does the default thing when a guy can't play anymore if he's a big quarterback. Then put him at tight end. It's a lot harder than that to play tight end in the NFL. I got it, but Cam's such a freak. Who knows?
He's the greatest runner in quarterback history in the NFL. Lamar's coming for him
Vic was pretty special as a runner.
because he can do it all.
No, he'll blow you over. He's a big man. I agree
Vic
with
was
you.
a great open field runner, and Lamar is a great open field runner, but he does everything. He can make you miss, and then he can fire it down the field like Michael did. I think he's got as good of an arm, if not better, than Michael's arm. And then on 3rd and 1, he's the most unstoppable player in the history of the league, 3rd and 1.
Vic is a curious case. Vic had a bigger arm, in my opinion, than almost anybody, but it was an inaccurate arm. He would fire it into the ground or 10 yards over your ahead, but it was a cannon. He had a cannon.
He did pound for pound. There's no arguing.
Yeah,
that.
and he could run like the wind blows. I mean, he was a freaky runner. But if you contained him and kept him in the pocket and make him throw the football, you could beat him. The Bucs did all the time. Derek Brooks did that to him.
But Cam
all
had
the
a
time.
year in which he would still throw
He
from
had
the
a
pocket,
singular
and
year.
it was absurd.
Yeah, he
absurd.
did. Yeah, no, that's true.
The numbers advantage of being a quarterback gives him a leg up on, say, the great running backs of all time
Sure.
that could get you short yardage. But still, at 3rd and 2, 4th and 2, didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Well, that was always the problem, right? You had to make sure that on 3rd down, if you stopped them, it couldn't be left to 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 because it might as well be a first down. You had to have 4th or 3, 4th or 4 to ensure they'd punt because that big son of a bitch was going to lean forward for 2 yards. So it was also 1st and 8. Every time, because if you didn't get them further out than 2 yards, they could go for it depending on where they were on the field, and he's going to get it.
Yeah.
He's just too big. Final hour, forthcoming. Stay with. Final hour of the Jeff Cameron Show, at least for today. Thanks for tuning to it. Good Monday, everybody. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you go to listen live via the streaming free. Always don't miss anything. Hey, sometimes you do. I understand that. If that's the case, go find us on Apple Podcasts. We'll post all 3 hours right there. You can email the show if you like, jcs at 979espnradio.com. We had some emails. We had some emails. Yeah, frustration abounds. I want to tell you that one of these emails from a guy named Bill is one of my favorite emails of the year. I cannot read it to you, Tom. But I will present this email at some point during the break.
What time did it arrive?
5:34 p.m. on Saturday.
Okay.
What time did our game end? What time did you guys go on with the post game?
3:30ish. 3:30ish.
So a couple hours after the game, he was stewing a little bit. He was stewing just a bit. He was probably like thinking about it, maybe having a beverage or two, and then it just hit him. He felt compelled to reach out. Uncle Jeff's here for that.
How many words is this email?
Well, let me double check here again. It was it's great. I love the headline. The subject. Jeff, this is obviously just my opinion. And then he
Okay.
Then he just, here we go.
Was it hateful?
I don't think I wouldn't call this hateful. There's name calling, but I don't know that it's hateful. It's kind of name calling that I've engaged in when my guys are frustrating me.
I see.
Not hateful at all, Tom. Just descriptive.
Colorful.
Mm-hmm. But I do like, too, after he got done saying everything that he needed to say, he said, that's really all I have to say. And then he reiterated one more time that initial headline, which was great.
God bless.
I'm going to say this. Saturday's game was easy. And we've talked about it most of the day, and we'll continue to talk.
Was for Satterfield and company.
It's just it's. I don't know if you thought the last glimmer of hope was the drive that could have cut it to 10 before the half. If you get into halftime at 31-21, you think the football gods. You give Louisville a reason to be angry. You kind of look in the mirror and go, can you believe this is a 10-point game? Okay, and who knows? Maybe then you have a shot when you come out in the second half. But when they got stuff there and it didn't happen, missed another field goal, everybody. Great. Yeah, let's add to the list of things we can't do. Clearly, kick is one of them. Doesn't matter. Run any of those jokers out there. They suck. So, we can't kick. To go along with can't tackle and catch. Can't catch. A lot of can'ts. A lot of can'ts. But they all add up to that ass beating. And it's a little uncomfortable. It is awfully unpredictable. North Carolina. Louisville. I mean, just kind of unpredictable what we're looking at. I don't know what we're going to get coming out of this bye. We got a bye this week. Thank God we get to take a rest from this team. I don't really need to see them right now. But let's see. I'm not going to – I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to assume a loss to Pitt. No. Pitt just got drubbed, didn't look good. Yeah. I mean, they've had injury problems. I'm not going to assume a loss to Pitt. I won't assume a loss to NC State. But I certainly will not assume a win.
No, when you are, and nothing that they can say during the week can change your opinion either way.
I don't even want to hear from them.
No, you're going to have to look at 2 or 3 drives. First, for the offense and the defense in that game and say, all right, where are we? Who are we? Is Jordan healthy? Is he not? Is he starting? Is he not? But I saw this from Brett McMurphy today, and he said that the NCAA's Committee on Academics recommends a 2-year suspension of any APR penalties. I like that. That means if we need some roster overhaul and the APR score was teetering, all right.
Yeah, well,
do what you got to do.
Tom, we need some roster overhaul. I think that if you're taking one thing from the show today, it's probably my feeling that we need to graduate and move on from a lot of these guys. We're going to have to raise the floor in terms of talent, too. They're just not very talented.
No.
They're not very talented. That is something that really we don't talk about enough.
For example, if you're looking for a run stuffer in a system that you're going to run a 5-2 or something in a given weekend, remember like the old Boston College games where it was you got to stack the line of scrimmage. Emmett Rice would fit that. In space covering guys, not going to get it done.
No.
But that guy tries.
Oh, he played hard.
Plays his ass off.
I'm glad you said something. I didn't mention him earlier today, and I should have. He played really hard, and he made a play in the end zone, got a safety, the whole deal. He really worked his tail off.
Made another play in coverage, and then you also, that's a 4-point swing to trail your guy who's way faster and to tackle him on the half-yard line. They get a 15-yard penalty for an illegal block.
That's correct, yeah.
That saves you 4 points.
No, you're
you
right.
Get behind mistakes and bad plays when a guy like that gets beat because you know he's giving you everything.
He's giving you everything he's got. He's just not good enough. But, that's fine. You're right. There are some guys. I'm not saying everybody was bad. Most were, and it's a really surprising result. So, like the Miami game, we kind of thought they were going to lose and maybe even get blown out. Kind of talked about that. Mentioned, too, the Notre Dame game. We actually played a little bit better than I thought we would. Notre Dame has one of the best offensive lines in college football. I thought this is a bad matchup for us, all that stuff. I've described this game here. Obviously, we were shocked by what we saw against North Carolina. To me, this is, along with Georgia Tech, I guess, just because that was the opener, and they've gone on to prove Georgia Tech has that they're not very good. I think this Louisville game is the biggest disappointment yet, Tom. I think this is that's what I would call this, the biggest disappointment yet.
Of his tenure, of the last 3-4 years, or
what
are we doing?
Of this season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was the biggest disappointment. That Louisville team was listless. They had lost 4 straight games. Their only win was against Western Kentucky. They weren't doing anything on offense. They weren't really doing anything on defense. A lot of people were looking at Satterfield going year 2. I understand it's weird, but you're not doing anything. This doesn't look like we're taking a step forward in any way. So it's not like we played a Louisville team that had real momentum, and then you went in there and kind of got ambushed or something, and next thing you know, it snowballs on you, avalanches. No. They were searching just like you were searching, but you were coming off a big win against the 5th-ranked team in the country. You had real momentum built in, and you go in there, and that's what you give us?
Yeah, the drive that says it all to me is 94 yards. It actually covers 97 because of the penalty, the pre-snap penalty on Louisville, and it wasn't difficult for them to go 97 yards.
Not at all.
I mean, it was under 10 plays. If you're going to go that long, that's got to be a 10 to 12 play drive, a couple of key third downs, third and sixes, third and sevens.
Yeah, guys make a couple big plays.
And you end up tipping your cap through attrition. That was the drive to me. I'm like, okay, this is a track meet. This isn't just a nice start for Louisville. They're just going to keep doing this.
One thing to note is if you're going to try to play, certain guys on the other team's best receiver, and you're not putting your best corner on their best receiver, like you're not having Asante Samuel follow Tutu Atwell, then expect in any situation where they have a one-on-one matchup for that receiver to run past your defensive back, because there ain't nobody on this roster that runs. Not like they got, not at that position.
Yeah, correct.
So you're going to lose that matchup.
I guess that Fuller thought he was going to be able to generate pressure with consistency and get Cunningham's eyes off of his targets down the field and get him mentally scrambling. But within a couple of drives, it was clear that the only downfield or upfield, depending upon how you're looking at it, penetration from the defensive line was going to be in the run game. It was going to be through the interior.
And they did that well early.
They did.
Yeah, early on they did, which is usually a great benefit because you can make somebody pretty one-dimensional and make them obvious, as in 3rd and long. Problem is, if you get somebody in 3rd and long, you can't give up a 50-yard play or a 70-yard play or a 48-yard play or a 32-yard play, but we did.
Yeah, if you look at their explosive play chart, it's not just Tutu. It's not just Javian Hawkins.
It's not just Fitzgerald.
Yeah, look at like their top 4 receivers and their long catch of the day. It's like all over 40 yards, and then Hawkins has how many runs in excess of 20, 25 yards? Like 4?
Oh, yeah. Feels that way. I'll pull it up here in a second.
Good gracious.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, let's vet it. I know we got a meaty second segment. We'll get to it. I'm not done with this.
One last thing. Marvin and Durden need to be on the field when they're inside their own 10-yard line. I don't care what rotations you have predetermined. Stop.
Yeah.
Just look at the situation. Those guys were the only 2 that were playing to that point in the game. And look what happened later. You get who knows? Maybe you get a safety on the board early in the game.
Maybe you get a play there. You're right.
It changes things. Jordan's not hurt yet. God, dog.
Oh, I've got more. I'll get to him. This is a gripe fest. Get it out of our system right here in the 5 o'clock hour. Let's get it out. It's Jeff Cameron Show. ESPN is canceling plans to host 8 of its men's college basketball events in a singular locale. That locale, Orlando. ESPN had planned to move 8 of its 10 non-conference events to the ESPN Wide World of Sports property at Walt Disney World in Orlando, including the Champions Classic, Charleston Classic, Myrtle Beach Invitational, NIT Season Tip-Off, Wooden Legacy, Orlando Invitational, Jimmy V Classic, and Diamond Head Classic. That was, of course, the site in Orlando, Wide World of Sports, for the NBA's bubble. Quote, ESPN events set out to create a protected environment for teams to participate in early season events in Orlando based on certain challenges surrounding testing protocols. We've opted to resume those tournaments during the 2021-2022 season. The challenges around testing protocol refers primarily to retesting players who had previously tested positive for coronavirus and been cleared. The protocols for a player testing positive while in the Orlando bubble were another key discussion point. The bubble was expected to run from November the 25th until early December, highlighted by the Champions Classic and the Jimmy V Classic, while the other 6 events are likely to simply resume in 2021. There is hope for the Champions Classic and Jimmy V Classic to move to a different location for this year. That, according to ESPN sources, the Champions Classic features Michigan State versus Duke, Kansas versus Kentucky, and while Jimmy V was expected to feature Baylor versus Illinois and Gonzaga in Tennessee, we'll see if it happens. But not good news in the world of college basketball there.
You can't not have the Jimmy V Classic if you're ESPN, so they will spare no expense to make that one happen, I would think.
I would think too, and I surely hope so. But, yeah, it's funny. I'm not going to lie. A lot of what we ended up seeing on Saturday kind of really got me thinking about basketball. Yeah, I went full bore thinking about basketball after what I watched on Saturday afternoon. It's not that I don't care to watch Florida State. We'll see what we are coming out of this bye week. We'll see who cares to play, who's going to fight, who's not. We'll see if there's something to latch on to and feel encouraged about. Tom, I wonder, last hour I brought this up with Ira, and I said that sometimes when I look out onto the field, I think, boy, they don't have any players. They just don't. They're not very athletic. They don't have any good players, and that's a disheartening thing to kind of have set in. But the other part, and I can live with understanding that you got to flip the roster and get better in recruiting and find a way to get better players out here. I don't know. I didn't get a chance. I know you and Gene do a great job on the War Chant TV post-game show on YouTube. I don't know what the callers were like in that. I didn't want to subject
not pleased.
I didn't want to subject myself. I'm not saying you guys shouldn't, but I knew I was going to have to rewatch the game and talk about the game today, so it's a little different. I didn't want to subject myself to that. But did anybody, or did yourself or Gene, did you guys say that there were moments in that second half? Because I haven't done that yet, but I felt like we had some guys kind of jogging around a little bit in the second half of that game. A lot of jogging around, kind of occupying space, not doing a whole lot.
Yeah, jogging in the second half is, I think I brought that up.
Okay.
And then you had comments right away that said, I saw some of it in the first half, some people there in the stands saying that the bench was, atrocious. The body language and the bench was atrocious. People who were sitting there and watching us and doing the Ira Schoffel thing and saying, how are we handling this adversity today?
So let me ask you, here's what I find interesting, and we've kind of wrestled with this on and off on the show today. We've had some segments where we talk solely about this. Other times we move into something else just to keep our sanity. And I'll never know, and I don't think we can know because I don't think the coaches are going to give it up. And given that we're going into a bye week, they don't really even have to talk that much. I'm wondering what happened from the end of the North Carolina game.
Yep.
To the kickoff of this game.
Agreed. It looked like something was
happened.
Up. Yep. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just simply that they showed up and they got their doors blown off, right?
Correct. I feel like, now listen, they did not respond to the fact that Louisville is a zone blocking team. Our guys don't know what they're doing. Oftentimes the wrong personnel is on the field. Sometimes what they're being asked to do, they can't do. They're not good enough. There are a lot of factors at play when you talk about sucking at that magnitude. And boy, did they. There are a lot of factors there, Tom, to kind of consider. But one of the things when I'm watching that game early on, and I know we score, I know we go down the field, and He pulls a rabbit out of the hat and dribbles the ball to himself and makes a play. But, man, other than the interior of the defensive line, which actually secretly played well, I dare say.
They started well, yeah.
Well, by the time they're getting blown out, it doesn't matter. But, yeah, and if I'm in the interior of the defensive line and I'm blowing it up and I'm changing the line of scrimmage the way that Marvin was, the way that Coop did certainly the way that Durden did, if I'm doing that and my guys can't keep contained like ever, well, you can understand how you'd lose interest. That said, they didn't look like none of the back seven certainly, and linebackers aren't good. But man, something is wrong. I don't know if there was a fight, if there was a problem in the locker room. Was there a divide? Did a coach get on somebody in a way that the kids didn't like? Mm-hmm. Is there something to the fact that I'm not trying to start rumors, but I'm trying to figure out why they looked so listless and disinterested almost from the beginning. It's 14-7 and they're disinterested. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, they look like they got bad news or something before the game.
So you know why it's easy to kind of sit around and begin to wonder aloud? And I'm not trying to create rumors, and yes, I'm speculating, admittedly, but you do that on talk radio where you ask aloud and you have conversations. I don't know what it could be tied to, but it was obviously James Blackman doesn't make the trip. Ron Dugans does not make the trip.
James Blackman did have a parent guardian respond in the pregame on social media. That's the power of the social media, saying it's an illness and it's not COVID. But responding directly to the situation rather than letting, just sit out there.
That's good. I didn't see that. Okay, so that's good to hear. I mean, I don't want him to be ill, but yeah,
of course.
Obviously, yeah. But so I don't know. Like, is the flu running through the team? Maybe. Is there something like those two guys missed?
The normal flu,
right? Yeah. The normal flu. Is there something going on there where we would be so listless? Because it just didn't seem like we cared to be there at all. And you're coming off the win.
Both sides of the ball, because the first drive happens, and outside of the first play, it's a discombobulated mess. There's a lot of things going on. There's missed exchange. Guys aren't lining up where they should be. So Cam McDonald, God, the first half.
He had a rough day.
The first play was designed for him. It was a good play. He's wide open. With the 35-yard line, starting field position, you're already in enemy territory. Then he turns a blocker loose. Then there's a false start penalty. This is all like in the first quarter, early second quarter. And then there's one play where, as they're lining up, he's switching sides of the field like 3 times, and the receivers in general look like they were confused as to where to line up, what depths.
Arguably the worst game I've ever seen our receivers play, and there's been some doozies lately. But
in general, just getting lined up, where to be, beyond the adjustments that Jordan's making pre-snap, where he's saying, all right, I want you to be here to block this guy. Those are normal things. Yeah. It looked more like a Willie game when it came to pre-snap organization. Guys just didn't seem to be ready and crisp. And does Ron Dugans account for all of that?
I don't think so. I don't think so either. It was very strange. I don't know. Did they get bad news? Were they ill? Was there a disconnect with the game plan? Was there confusion all week long? They looked like a team that didn't prepare to play the football game. They didn't look like there was no sort of cogent plan. I'm not real sure that certainly the requisite energy and intensity in order to play a football game wasn't there. They look ill-prepared to play football on Saturday. There's no other way to say it. And you can argue that you got some kids that, are going through the motions, maybe have bad habits, haven't bought in. Okay, that's been the case all year long. You would have thought that getting a thrilling victory in prime time over North Carolina, one in which you celebrate together in the locker room like you'd won the Super Bowl. I mean, they embrace Coach Norvell. Obviously, he's taking the hammer to the rock, and they're jumping all around. And everybody, I thought, okay, good. That's the buy-in you got to have. Yeah. That's the belief you got to have. And more importantly, that's the result that you need to have it pay off, right? If anything, they may not be good enough to win a bunch of these games that remain, but they're going to play hard for each other because this was a moment of coming together where they got the payoff. It's as if that game never happened.
Well, I think part of it, too, is you see how easy it is to break our will. And I hope that there's an outside force. In a way, I do, because I would rather believe that they've got a little bit more, depth to their personality and character to them. But you look
competition should bring that out.
So if you look at the defensive side, first down, second down, both those plays start well.
Yeah.
And then you have the third down. I mean, he's in isolation. They telegraph their blitz. And so Louisville and Cunningham know what's coming. They know it's man on the outside, 2-2s and man in the slot. That's trouble. And the linebackers try and change their gaps. All the rushers try and change their gaps to confuse the scheme, but it's a counting thing. They're like, all right, there's 5 of you coming or 6 of you coming. We got it. And then that play happens, and that's strike 1. Strike 2 was the backside contain. Strike 2 is the backside contain, and then the defense at that point is a mess. On offense, I think the sequence that killed us was the Preston Daniel blindside block, which what the hell is he supposed to do in that situation? Do you agree with that or not, that's a flag-worthy
all right, so
crackback?
Listen, the cracks were legal. I've been cracked upon. I've delivered cracks. I always thought they were cheap, but they were legal, especially at that part of the line of scrimmage. But they were made illegal a couple years back, and it's a point of emphasis in the National Football League, and it's a point of emphasis in college.
I understand, but this isn't either right after the snap or it's not a sudden change interception return where you've got defender on offense.
But they're going to tell you that's and in this case, I think it is the very definition of helpless and defenseless. I think that's true. You're a defenseless player in that situation. You can't see that player.
I've got a hard time with this. I understand. You played it. You experienced it.
Well, let me tell you. You know
I
you know what I call this, but it drives me nuts. But
it's a linebacker down the field whose eyes are on the player. So is Daniel supposed to run a pick like it's basketball? Just put his hands over, his lower region and just pick?
He takes him out. He follows through with it. And there's a whole lot of what for to that.
And then the drop right after that. So that's the sequence I think that kills it. And then as the game wears on, I don't know if it was the shot wears off or Jordan Travis took extra punishment.
Well, he got hurt
But the wing
again.
is more broken as time goes along.
Well, he can't have him out there if that's the case, though.
Agreed.
I had a problem with that.
Yeah,
Don't keep putting
put
him
Chubba
out
in there too late.
Yeah, get Chubba in there sooner. It's not like we're going to win the game. I'm not saying Chubba would have saved the day, but you're really at a loss at this situation with, A, you could get the player more hurt, B, he's useless to you right now if he can't run.
Right, exactly. And the game's not over technically at that point that we go on that huge long drive. Very, very long drive where we get stopped. But it's all runs. So what good is that going to do you?
Yeah.
You might as well. So you're either conceding the game one way because you have to call 100% runs or 80% runs, or you're conceding it the other way because you're getting your freshman in there. So either way is not a good solution. You may as well let 12 play a little bit more.
I'm not going to be surprised if Chubba Purdy starts the next game.
Me either. Yeah.
Why?
Especially if Jordan's 100%, you play him. He can do a lot of things for you.
Yeah.
And the guys play hard for him, I think.
They don't catch the ball for him.
Yeah. I know.
That was something to behold. I don't listen.
But you look at the way they block for him. The pass pro was Pro Football Focus said yes, but it looked good. The O-line wasn't a problem. Like if I had to list the top 10 things. The offensive line is
seldom a problem. Now I will say this. Whenever we're in, and we said this in the pregame show on Tallahassee Game Day, I said it during the Jeff Cameron show all week long. Look, I understand we're all in love with Jordan Travis because he's provided a spark. He's given us an identity. They've been able to utilize a strength in his game to build an offense. Something that is cogent and some semblance of success has transpired because of Jordan Travis. And he makes your offensive line look better. He does a lot of things that help your team. Things that James Blackman can't do. Things that Tate Rodemaker's not ready to do. And so that skill set has been utilized. But I think because he's hit on big plays, and he really has hit on some huge plays, but those are all predicated and set up by the running ability that he has. I think some people think he can throw the ball better than he does. He's not even average at throwing the football. So if we're behind the chains and a defense knows you're not going to run because he's been dinged up, and you're not playing it to where it's 3rd and 10, let's get it to 4th and 3, and I'm going to go for it. If you're not doing those things, well, then he's going to be asked to throw into windows from the pocket, and we're going to get beat. He should have had 4 interceptions. There were balls that were right to Louisville players they just can't catch. And, of course, he wasn't helped out by drops. I'm not saying it's all on him. It's not. But when we're behind the chains, he can't throw. Well, so this is problematic.
And here's the thing. Like, I know that when you talk about like a Monday morning quarterback, and when you're talking about how a defense is schemed up and what you want to see, it can sound like you want to have your cake and eat it.
Yeah,
too.
you want man and zone. You want zone. Yeah.
Or you want pressures,
yes.
Or you want to have a guy throw into windows.
Right.
But I'm sorry. I'm going to fall for that, and I'm going to sound like that because for me, with Cunningham at quarterback, look at what they did at Jordan.
Yeah, let him throw the ball.
How many times did Louisville rush 3 and leave a spy in?
That's right.
Or just rush 3 and drop 8?
Yeah, because they want you to throw.
Right.
Desperately.
With Cunningham, it's easy. You made it so easy on him because our pressures, first of all, aren't
Never
that
get
effective.
home, no.
The timing of it is hardly ever effective. And then secondly, I mean, it's pre-snap reads that are so simple to see, oh, you're in man. All right. 2-2s and 1-on-1. Sounds good to me.
Good night,
or
Irene.
you're going to turn your back on me and you're not fast enough to handle my ability to scramble.
And some of the guys that you have in man covering their fastest player are
Right.
not the guys that you would choose to be in that position.
Right. So I get it. It sounds like you're playing the bait and switch game.
No, but you can.
What we did against Miami, what we did against Georgia Tech was, all right, put it together. Put 12 plays
And
together.
he did.
Cunningham didn't have to do that at all.
Well, no,
Life
they were
was
all big
so easy for him.
Well, but here's the thing. It's not – I don't think it's unfair. It's not an unfair request. I said last hour to Ira, 2nd and 24, you can't be in man and let a guy run right past you for a 50 or 50-something yard touchdown. It's 2nd and 24.
Right.
What are you doing?
Yep.
It's not an unreasonable ask to keep that in front of you via the zone and set up 3rd and 9. You know, I mean – we see it in the NFL every week, and it happens in college.
Right. You're a little perturbed with, 3rd and 12. You're like, okay, well, I understand.
Yeah,
You're playing the numbers.
Playing the numbers, right. Sometimes a guy makes a play.
Right.
The Steelers yesterday against the Titans were 3rd and long constantly. I think they were 13 of 18. I watched that whole game. It was awesome. I think the Steelers may be the best team in football, but that said.
Also, the Titans are some of the luckiest bunch ever.
They also
Look at all the deflections, all
crazy.
the fumble luck yesterday.
They do play with a lot of heart, though. And they play like their head coach because Vrabel for 13 years in the league, right? But one thing to note is that the Steelers are content to throw to a lot of weapons short of the chains. So they're basically saying with Johnson and all these other guys, we're going to give you a chance. You're going to catch it 6-7 yards downfield because they're going to give that to you. And now you just got to make a guy miss. I need you to get 6 yards, 3rd and 13. And turn around and get 6 yards. And they do. Constantly. They've got playmakers that way. And the Titans had to adjust to that, and that's where they got some more one-on-ones on the outside.
Right.
But you've got to make somebody do that. Make them beat you that way before you adjust. And we don't.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. The
No,
plan didn't
it
fit the guy
doesn't.
that we're playing. Like, if he was an electrifying guy that everybody says he is, like, if he was that player,
Yeah.
you got to do something to force the issue. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, I mean, his quarterback rating was like 190 for the game. We didn't do anything to get him off his spot and challenge him.
It was pitch and catch.
Or we didn't block the rushing lanes and clog the rushing lanes and say, all right, you can have 5-6 seconds, dude. We know you're going to air me
Throw
on
the
2
ball.
or 3.
Yeah, you're going to miss.
Because that's who the hell you are.
That conversation had to have been interesting on the plane.
If you're going to get home, get home.
I'm just wondering what that conversation was like because, again, a head coach said something in a press conference that I'm betting he wished he hadn't said, but that just speaks to the level of frustration that he felt watching the same thing we were watching. And that had to have been, okay, that's not the right play.
At least the kick return team got a good workout. A lot of reps.
Man,
got a lot of reps on Saturday.
Ton of reps. Yeah. It's hurtful. Basketball's nearly here. You know, I was geared up expecting Game 6 tonight of the World Series, but we don't get it. It's tomorrow. As an aside, one mention here before I get to what we do have here on the airwaves. I kind of really enjoyed the fact that we saw an effort to steal home, and it was close. I thought he was safe at first. When I looked at that, eventually I came to the conclusion he was out, but it looked like he was safe at the beginning.
It's closer than the broadcast was willing to give it, right? The
Much
way it was covered,
closer.
the way it was reviewed, they're like, it was in passing, and they got him, and they're going to break him. Like, are we
sure he got him? Because that little slide to the outside with the hands sliding around, I'm like, I'm not entirely certain. And you could tell they weren't certain either, meaning the catcher, he was kind of like, oh, I think I got him. But that's a nice little move. Well, if you're going to do it, that's the guy to do it on. I mean, that little hitchity-do nonsense, if you can get halfway down the line with him looking the other way, you've got a legitimate shot. That's why it was so close to begin with. That's a slow-ass delivery to the plate.
Yeah, and he had to make a perfect throw pretty much, too.
Yeah, well, and the play is that he didn't balk. That is really amazing that he didn't balk because you have to step back behind the rubber before you can make that throw. And most of the time, it's not like a steal of second that catches you off guard because there's not that much damaging in the way of repercussion. This is a run. This is to tie the game. This is a big damn deal. And if you hear he's going from a guy at third, that's pretty well done. You got to give him credit not to balk there. A lot of guys would balk in that situation, kind of stop and freeze and not do what you have to do in order not to get called for the balk. He gets credit for that. That's a damn shame. I felt like that could have changed the game.
But it wasn't – you didn't have to win that game. Buehler was always going to lurk if you're the Rays.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to win it because Saturday's result got them where they needed to be. So you can win 2 in a row in baseball. Come on, what are we doing?
Oh, yeah. No. You just got to win the next one. That's all. And let's get to Game 7. It's throw everybody and their brother out there. Anybody not named sorry-ass Tyler Glasnow. Get those guys into the game. You're going to be all right.
Boy, I thought Steven Matz had the worst body language of any pitcher in the big leagues, but 10 minutes, 15 minutes into that game last night, I'm looking at his starry-eyed expression, and Kevin Cash has to be looking out at the mound going, do you want to be here?
Yeah, no, well, I used to ask it all the time in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I'm glad the world's getting to see it. And it's really frustrating that he's been on both my teams because he's really frustrating. There's nobody that should look like that.
Yeah.
He's a monster.
John Smoltz was going through the process that you went through for years last night. He said, see? You know, like when he throws 100, he's like, see?
Why are you
You don't
nibbling?
need the perfect pitch here. That's good enough. That'll get it done.
I used to scream, Tom, I can't tell you. We called that kid up 4 different times trying to get it. We even put him in the bullpen so he would only have to pitch an inning. And he still walked the world. And it'd be 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Oh.
He'd have an outing where you're like, oh, there it is. Put it all together. 7 2/3, 2 hits, no runs, 10 strikeouts. You're like, okay, there's the guy that's 6'8" that should throw 102. And listen, you're out pitch on a 2-2 with runners at first and second in a tie game. You don't throw him a slider in the dirt. Throw 100 at the letters.
Yeah.
He ain't going to hit it.
Yeah, the philosophy should be just ones. All ones.
Yeah. And if you're and they tried, they would in Pittsburgh, no matter who was catching, he would shake them off and you'd see him put down the one like, dude, throw it. You throw 100. What are we doing? You're practically on top of somebody by the time you let it go. It'd be like if Randy Johnson refused to throw a fastball. It's dumb. But that's who he is. And I don't, it sounds personal and maybe it sounds vitriolic because he screwed me in Pittsburgh, but now he's screwing us in Tampa Bay. But it's just more that when you have that stuff and you do that, it's what drives you nuts about guys that you've had on your staff.
Well, Wheeler, I mean, he pitched well this year for Matthews Phillies, but I mean, he'd do 2 innings of perfect work, and it was so easy breezy.
Yeah, you're like, look at this. Look
and
at this
then,
guy, yeah.
He'd be at 25 pitches. Then you get through the 3rd inning, and he's at 57. And you're like, what in the world? And it's 2 runs are on the board. They had 1 hit in the inning. There were 2 walks.
Yeah, you're like,
okay, hit a batter. That's great. Pelfrey, Zach Wheeler. Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
Lived it.
So, no baseball tonight, but we do have the NFL, and it's the Bears and the Rams, and that actually strikes me as a good game. Hey, and kudos to the NFL on Sunday. We got the endings to the 1 o'clock games was the most fun I've had watching football in a long time. Every game. It was nuts. Every game coming down to something spectacular, something absurd. How did that happen? Falcons doing what the Falcons do, and that has to leave those fans incredulous. But by now, they're probably laughing. That's actually funny now because you weren't going anywhere. So the second that he scores and tries to fall down but is across the line, you're like, so this is going to happen, isn't it? This is going to happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that somebody had flashbacks back here on this side of the glass because of how Indiana Penn State finished. You had two guys go through the same thing where they're confused and or reluctant. They go, no! Almost as though there's a gravitational pull inside the end zone.
Bizarre. But I stayed away from that game for the reasons that we said.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem right. I was like, why is Indiana only a 6-point underdog to Penn State? What am I missing here with these two? And I just left it alone. And the result told me.
It should have been a cover just with victory formation and a Penn State win. Instead, you got what you got. And that's funny because I'm talking to a prospective client, and hopefully we'll be able to tell you about this person if they sign on, Indiana grad.
Oh, good for them.
And so I talked to him last week. I'm like, hey, man, can you explain to me what's going on with the 6.5?
Yeah, like, what's that about?
He goes, we're always teasers. We tease you. We tease ourselves, our own fan base. We play these teams close, and we're good for that. And then they lose in the end. So I'm sure that this guy was,
He's happy.
That's epic. That final play is epic. That is something that you get blown up, you have put above your mantle, because they don't ever get that win.
No, they don't ever
But that is such an amazing photo. I mean, what a play.
Did you see the record, Ohio State's record against Indiana since like 1945? Did you see that?
It was 45. Was it like
the
50-2?
I think that was, yes. I think it was almost exactly like that, yes. What was interesting about it was they said who owns the highest winning percentage, one Big Ten opponent over another Big Ten opponent in the last 70 years, whatever it was. And the graphic came up. It's Ohio State over Indiana. And it is something absurd. It is. It's like 68-2 or 55. Yeah, it's unreal, where you're just like, oh, my God, Indiana, you couldn't fall into 3 wins?
Remember the day when you get it. But Ohio State has been that team whenever we talk about the ups and the downs. Ohio State has been pretty bulletproof for 25 years now against any other program. If you're looking for consistency of top 5 appearances and not that big dip that Florida, USC, Michigan, Texas, everybody, us, Miami, we've all had the dips.
We're going through it now, yeah.
Ohio State's just been there, always.
Well, I remember when Cooper was the coach and we beat their ass mercilessly in the Sugar Bowl. And he was talking smack the week of, and I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, but they got out there and Florida State outclassed Ohio State in every facet of the game. And it didn't look like Ohio State belonged on the same field with Florida State. We were in our heyday, and for a long time, I just never felt like he was a guy that could get them to where they needed to go. But then, obviously, post that time, once they fired him, and I want to say they fired him after a 9 or 10 win season. Because he couldn't beat Michigan, and it ended up getting flipped on its ear. Obviously,
what was his name?
John Cooper.
It was John Cooper.
Yeah, John Cooper. Yeah,
weird.
Go look up John Cooper's final season at Ohio State. I could have it wrong, but I want to say they fired him after a good season or a winning season.
Yeah, I remember the not beating the rivals thing because Lloyd Carr owned his ass, right?
Yeah, right. You got to go back a ways. We're getting older.
8-4.
Okay, I knew they had a winning season.
So here are his last 6 seasons at Ohio State: 11-2, 11-1, 10-3, 11-1, 6-6, 8-4.
Ooh, the 6-6 followed up by 8-4 ain't gonna get it done there ever. So that's a toughie. But yeah, he couldn't beat his rivals, and they would win 10 games, and people would fall back. Oh, how are you gonna fire a guy that wins 10 games? Well, when he loses every year to the rival.
That's crazy. So I'm looking at his tenure there. In 1988, he started as their head coach, and they went 4-6-1. That's the last time they were under 500.
1988
as a program. 8-4, 7-4-1, 8-4, 8-3, and I listed you off the last part of his tenure. But 6-6 and 99, they didn't do worse than 6-6 after that with Tressel.
No,
that's got to be it. Good God, the consistency of that program. Somebody bring him down.
Well, it's supposed to be Michigan, but they don't. And by the way, this is the same thing that you would say about Florida State University. I mean, Tom, go back if you'd like, and here I'll do it for you. 1988, Florida State went 11-1. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah. This is 14. I know about this stuff.
11-1, 10-2, 10-2, 11-2, 11-1, 13-1, 10-1, 10-2, 11-1, 11-1, 11-2, 12-0, 11-2, 8-4, 9-5, 10-3, 9-3, 8-5, and then it hits the fan. we get in trouble, and so they count those as losses. They weren't. We went to bowl games, but we were a 6-loss team, all that good stuff. But still, 9-4, 7-6, 10-4, 9-4, 12-2, 14-0, 13-1, 10-3, 10-3, 7-6, and then the last 2 seasons, 5-7, 6-7. So those are the last 2 years, and we're currently 2-4, and just possibly put together our worst performance yet.
Yeah.
It's as we discussed earlier today.
It's getting there.
It's on the. Well, I mean, I'm talking about Saturday.
Yeah,
that thing is up there on the list of. That's a toughie. Watching that thing is brutal. Monday Night Football. It's coming up next. First, though, you'll get Front Row Knowles. They got to have fun breaking this one down. Oh, I just.
I haven't heard it yet.
I haven't either. I'm going to listen to it on the way home.
But KJ reached his wit's end a couple years ago on the secondary, and I got to imagine this is a redux of that, and that was classic. Remember the video version they did that before as a teaser? They suck. We suck. I was like, yep, all right. Well, they broke him. They broke him.
He was probably saying it. I was saying it on Saturday. He had to have been saying it on Saturday. I mean, oh my Lord. There are so many individual moments in that game where you're going to do that? Okay. Good thing it's a bye week. We need the bye.
Well,
we need 2 weeks worth of buys.
A
lot of buys.
But the bye has an effect of things festering, and that's not what you want. You wanted the North Carolina game to lead you into the bye, so you could have 2 weeks of healing, not festering.
Well, but it didn't, and now we have a bye, and I'm thankful for that bye. I don't want that team on my TV screen on Saturday. I don't want to see them. I don't want to look at them. Screw them. It's the Jeff Cameron Show. We're done. We're calling it a night. Front Row Knowles up next, followed by Monday Night Football if you're out driving around. Good job, Tom. Good job, Matthew. Be well, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.